The first time J.J. Wright walked into Savory Street Bistro with his grandmother's leather-strapped recipe binder tucked under his arm, he believed his soul food belonged alongside their artisanal toast and single-origin espresso. The restaurant's interior gleamed with Scandinavian minimalism: whitewashed walls, polished concrete floors, delicate succulents in geometric pots, and waitstaff in charcoal aprons greeted him with polite curiosity as he set down his binder. He described his vision: slow braised oxtails, glazed in bourbon pepper gravy, collard greens simmered with smoked turkey, his signature jalapeno infused cornbread that cracked just enough on the edge to feel homemade. For a moment, the owners exchanged glances behind the slate topped bar. J.J. watched their brows furrow as he held up vintage black and white photos of his grandmother stirring gumbo in her heels only kitchen, of his uncle firing hunks of pork belly over an open flame, of neighborhood church picnics where his dishes had disappeared faster than the preacher's hallelujahs. He waited for the sparkle of interest, the promise of a menu collaboration that would bridge two culinary worlds. Instead, he heard, "Thank you for coming, Mr. Wright. We admire your passion, but our patrons look for a certain aesthetic. Your menu would be wonderful elsewhere, but it just isn't the fit we're going for here." The words landed soft but firm, like closing a book on a chapter still meant to be written. J.J. pressed his brow with his fingers as they turned the pages of his binder, pages stained with years of Sunday dinners and scraped knee memories, before tucking it under his arm and stepping back onto the sidewalk. That night, J.J. returned home to his tiny apartment above his aunt's barbershop, the binder resting on the nightstand as he lay awake, listening to the hum of late-night traffic. He thought of every perfectly seared slab of catfish he'd tested on friends, every nervous first attempt at deep-frying chicken wings for a block party, every pinch of his grandmother's secret spice rub that had lifted his spirits through college tuition struggles. Despite the sting of rejection, his resolve hardened. If Savory Street's owners wouldn't showcase his cooking, he would bring his kitchen to the streets. He spent the next morning gathering battered cast-iron skillets, stacking flight cases of ingredients in his trunk, strips of smoky bacon, ruby red tomatoes, jars of fiery hot sauce his uncle distilled in the garage. He mapped out an alley a block behind the bistro, envisioning the crackle of burners and the sweet swirl of cornbread steam rising against the brick wall. When the bistro's neon closed sign flickered off that evening, J.J. slipped into the alley, flipped open his tailgate, and lit the first flame that would soon draw the city's hungry and curious alike. By the second night, J.J.'s alley had become hallowed ground. He arrived just after dusk with his battered cooler and duffel bag of spices, setting up beneath a flickering sodium lamp that cast long shadows on the brick walls. He arranged his cast-iron skillets and 20-inch griddle on portable burners, each flame igniting the night air with the scent of rendered fat and sizzling onions. As he ladled collard greens into white takeout cartons, he heard the first rumble of voices turning down the alley, curious diners guided by the tantalizing aroma of smoked ham hocks and fiery jalapenos. By 8 p.m., the line snaked past dumpsters and fire escapes, a testament to the power of word of mouth in a city hungry for authenticity. Office workers on their way home paused in their button-downs, students in hoodies traded bites of crispy fried catfish, and a cab driver ordered 3 orders of mac and cheese to go, insisting, "No tax, just make sure that cheese is killer." Phones glowed as people filmed the pop-ups every moment, hands scooping collards, steam swirling above golden cornbread, J.J.'s sweat-dampened brow as he pressed spoonfuls of sweet potato pie into miniature cups. When a health inspector arrived, drawn by a flurry of calls from the bistro's bewildered kitchen staff, he expected chaos. Instead, he found order. J.J.'s burners stood on leveled boards, the cooler brimmed with ice, a roll of disposable gloves hung from a hook on his folding table. The inspector flipped through permits J.J. had hastily secured from a friendly farmer's market overseer, then looked up at the hissing burners and the smiling crowd. Instead of issuing a shutdown notice, he furrowed his brow and asked for a sample of the collards. One taste, and he conceded with a shake of his head, "This is dangerously good." He spent the next 20 minutes scribbling a memo not to crack down, but to facilitate such events, noting that a special health code variance be drafted in recognition of public demand. Around midnight, JJ ladled the final serving of peach cobbler, its buttery crust collapsing under ruby red juices, into a waiting box. He packed his gear amid cheers and promises of, "See you tomorrow." As he snapped the cooler shut, he realized something profound. By cooking in defiance of exclusion, he'd forced the very system that kept him out to not only bend, but to rewrite its rules. And in doing so, he had turned one alley into the city's most vital restaurant, a place where soul food wasn't just sustenance, but a catalyst for change. By the weekend, the alley behind Savory Street Bistro had become the city's most talked-about address. Videos of JJ's pop-up feast raced across social media. Steaming containers piled high with glistening collard greens, golden hush puppies, and ribs lacquered in a sticky, spice-kissed glaze. Local food bloggers arrived armed with DSLRs and notepads, lauding his revolutionary comfort food, and posting pictures that dripped into Instagram feeds under the rallying cry number "Feed the Movement." The next morning, JJ awoke to find his phone buried under hundreds of notifications, messages from neighborhood associations offering to help crowdfund a permanent outdoor kitchen, a feature request from the city's tourist board, and a text from a local council member reading, "We need to talk about making this official." Even the health department dispatches had changed tone, no longer talking of violations, but of pilot programs and community catering permits. Within hours, a bilingual press release arrived in JJ's inbox, announcing a full review of mobile food regulations, promising streamlined licensing for community-led pop-ups, and a special taste equity task force to ensure that culinary traditions from all neighborhoods would be honored and protected. That evening, an official from the health department showed up in the alley with forms and clipboards. And, astonishingly, a catered dinner from JJ's station. Savory pulled pork sliders, crisp fried okra, and his signature peach cobbler wedges. She introduced herself as Marianne Lopez and told him, "After the outcry, the commissioner asked us to experience the food that sparked the conversation." They walked the line together as JJ served each person, and Marianne scribbled notes on her pad, sampling bites herself when no one was looking, nodding with genuine delight, and later promising him a seat at the table when the new community food policy was drafted. Meanwhile, neighborhood business owners teamed up with venture architects to design a permanent Alley Eats Plaza proposal, complete with retractable awnings, communal picnic benches, and a palette of murals celebrating the city's culinary heritage. Residents signed petitions for the plaza, and local artists offered to paint its walls for free. Under the flicker of street lamps, the alley's brick face became a canvas of hope. Stenciled silhouettes of hands breaking cornbread and spoons lifting beans, all arranged around a bold declaration, "This table is ours." When JJ finally packed up his skillets that night, he paused to look at the crowd's lingering silhouettes. Families sharing takeout boxes under the glow of that single lamp, friends swapping stories over buttery biscuits, and a health inspector now chatting animatedly with a taco truck owner about cross-training certifications. In that charged, laughter-filled moment, JJ realized he had not only cooked a feast, but had catalyzed a movement, one that would forever blur the lines between street corner and five-star kitchen, between regulation and justice, and between exclusion and communal celebration. Inside the gleaming conference room of City Hall, the air hummed with anticipation and the faint aroma of catered hors d'oeuvres. J.J. Wright sat at the long mahogany table, flanked by neighborhood leaders, a representative from the health department, and the city council member who had championed the pop-up's cause. Opposite them sat the owners of Savory Street Bistro, their faces composed yet visibly tense, white faces that had once dismissed his food as incongruous with their upscale menu. The council member opened the session with measured gravitas. "We're here because Mr. Wright's pop-up has uncovered a glaring inequity in our city's food regulations and our cultural values. Tonight, Savory Street Bistro's management will have the opportunity to explain why they initially rejected one of their own neighbors and then closed their doors to the very community that makes this city vibrant. A hush fell over the room as one of the bistro's partners, a sharply dressed man with a precise haircut, rose to speak. He cleared his throat. "We apologize for any offense caused," he began, voice polite but strained. "Our decision was guided by brand alignment and market research, nothing personal." When JJ stood jaw clenched and asked for specifics, "Which customers, exactly, would your soul food alienate?" the partner faltered. "Our data showed—" He trailed off, unable to cite a single patron who had ever complained. JJ leaned forward, voice calm but cutting. "You turned me away without reason, yet refused to apologize publicly. Meanwhile, my food drew thousands, lifted local spirits, and rewrote health codes to welcome people like me. So tell me, what real risk did my cooking pose to your brand?" The partner's composure cracked. He stammered, "It was a difference in cuisine focus." Council chambers murmured in disbelief as JJ's allies piled on. The health department's lead inspector testified that JJ's setup exceeded every safety standard. A food justice advocate produced maps showing food deserts near the bistro, arguing that soul food was not peripheral but essential. And local business owners recounted how his pop-up had boosted foot traffic and sales across the block. When the bistro partner attempted damage control, offering a one-off charity dinner collaboration, JJ interrupted. "I'm not here for a single event. I'm here for policy. I want equitable access for every chef in the city, so no one is ever told they don't fit the aesthetic." His words hung in the air, heavy with challenge. After another hour of heated testimony, the council member closed the hearing. The city will adopt an updated food equity ordinance, requiring any licensed restaurant to consider local culinary traditions, to participate in community pop-up initiatives, and to make public their reasons for menu exclusions. Failure to comply may result in fines or license reviews. Behind JJ, community leaders erupted in cheers and applause, while the bistro partners sat slumped, the weight of public accountability finally upon them. As JJ stepped down from the dais, the partner offered a tight nod. JJ returned it with quiet dignity, knowing that tonight he had not only vindicated his grandmother's recipes, but had reshaped the very rules governing who gets to share food and whose culture is welcome at the table. Within days of the ordinance's passage, the city's Department of Economic Development rolled out a grant program to help restaurateurs and aspiring chefs from all neighborhoods launch pop-up kitchens and community feasts. JJ received a check, enough to rent a refurbished shipping container in the new Alley Eats Plaza, and hired 3 assistants from his neighborhood who had been inspired by his alley concerts. Together, they transformed the once dark corridor into a vibrant food court with painted murals, strings of market lights, and communal picnic tables salvaged from a defunct picnic pavilion. On opening night, JJ stood behind his gleaming griddle as neighbors streamed in, carrying lawn chairs and picnic baskets. He ladled his signature red beans and rice into biodegradable bowls, ladled spicy greens atop them, and crowned each plate with crispy cornbread cubes. A brass band set up at the plaza's center, trading riffs between bites, while a local DJ spun records of blues, gospel, and hip-hop. Children chased bubbles near the murals, and elders sat under the market lights, reminiscing about church potlucks and family reunions. A regional food magazine's photographer snapped close-ups of JJ's dishes and the smiling crowd, texting back that the feature would call Alley Eats the first true cultural kitchen incubator in our city's history. Meanwhile, Savory Street Bistro's owners, still smarting from the public defeat, invited JJ to consult on a new community menu series they were launching in response to the ordinance. He agreed, but only on the condition that they host rotating guest chefs from every neighborhood, pay them a living wage, and share a portion of profits with local food banks. The bistro's head chef, once dismissive of soul food, now stood side by side with JJ in his alley kitchen, stirring collards and admitting, I've learned more about feeding people in 2 weeks here than in 2 years inside. Across town, established restaurants applied for the same community kitchen grants, offering Ethiopian injera plates, Mexican tamale nights, and vegan soul-style weekends, all in the spirit of cultural exchange JJ had championed. The tourist board updated its maps to highlight the Alley Eats Plaza and sister pop-up sites, drawing food pilgrims eager to taste the city's newly celebrated flavors. Late one evening, as JJ closed his shutters for the night, he paused under the glowing plaza sign, painted with his grandmother's name and adorned with hand-drawn spoons and forks. He thought of every menu rejection that had brought him here, of every simmering pot that had rallied thousands, and of how simple acts of defiance had sparked a citywide renaissance. In the silence between the market lights, he realized that he hadn't just claimed a spot for soul food. He had opened up every kitchen door in town, ensuring that no chef would ever again be silenced for serving the flavors of their heritage. As spring thawed into summer, the Alley Eats Plaza became the city's beating heart of culinary innovation. JJ arrived each morning to find neighborhood children setting out chalk menus, graffiti artists painting new murals of spice jars and rolling pins, and community gardeners tending herb beds that perfumed the air. He and his team organized weekly Global Soul Nights, inviting chefs from immigrant communities to share their own family recipes alongside his southern classics. Last Tuesday featured Haitian griot and spicy pickles. This Friday would showcase Filipino lechon and kimchi hush puppies. On a sweltering Thursday evening, city council representatives joined JJ to announce the Soul Food Incubator Fund, a multi-year grant program inspired by his success. They unveiled a refurbished industrial space down the block, once a shuttered factory, now dubbed the Community Kitchen Collective. Within, 20 shared cooking stations, walk-in refrigerators stocked by local farmers, and classrooms for workshops taught by seasoned chefs. JJ cut the ceremonial ribbon with his grandmother's antique kitchen shears, and an impromptu serenade of blues and jazz rose from a corner band, their notes echoing through the converted warehouse. By month's end, the collective's first cohort of 10 food fellows was at work, a vegan soul food artist experimenting with mushroom oxtails, a Guatemalan pupusera infusing masa with collard green pupusas, and a Syrian baker adapting her grandmother's flatbreads into cornbread wraps. JJ mentored each fellow, sharing business strategies even as he absorbed their diverse techniques, his own culinary vocabulary expanding with every tasting. In return, they offered him muscovado sugar-spiced beans and cardamom-laced stews, their aromas mingling in the steam that rose into the high factory rafters. News of the collective spread beyond city limits. Municipal leaders from 3 neighboring counties visited to replicate the model, while a national foundation earmarked a $2 million endowment to seed similar incubators nationwide. JJ found himself traveling to cities he'd once only driven past, consulting on community kitchens in former textile mills and vacant strip mall plazas. Everywhere he went, people spoke of the right effect, the idea that one chef's determination could flip regulations, transform neglected spaces, and ignite new economies based on culture and collaboration. Yet JJ remained rooted in the Alley Eats Plaza. One Sunday morning, after the collective's brunch pop-up, he ambled through the gardens, greeting kids harvesting mint for iced tea and elders settling into repurposed church pews to share recipes. He paused at the corner where he'd first lit his burners, now marked by a bronze plaque. Here, soul food sparked a movement. As he knelt to touch the inscribed words, he heard the distant sizzle of a flap-top grill and the laughter of apprentices learning to flip their first fritters. In that warm, fragrant moment, JJ knew that his journey, born of rejection and powered by community, had blossomed into something beyond any single meal or protest. He had built a living legacy where heritage cuisines thrived, where entrepreneurs found launchpads and reclaimed alleys, and where every hungry soul could taste the promise of inclusion. And as the sun filtered through the city's skyline onto the bustling plaza, he realized that the real feast was not just on the plates, but in the bridges he had cooked across neighborhoods, hearts, and futures. Чат GPT сказал, когда первые листья осени начали дрейфовать через аллеи Итс Плаза, Джей Джей Райт нашел себя стоящим под тем же мерцающим уличным фонарем, где его секретный поп-ап впервые загорелся. But now, the plaza shone with new life. Strings of vintage Edison bulbs crisscrossed above communal tables hewn from reclaimed wood. Food stalls brimmed with fragrant spices, their banners proclaiming everything from Creole comfort to global vegan soul. And families lingered over steaming bowls as children chased stray fireflies near the herb gardens. This evening marked the culmination of the city's inaugural Soul Food and Spice Festival, a 3-day celebration born from JJ's original rebellion and championed by the Community Kitchen Collective. From dusk until midnight, the alley pulsed with music. A jazz trio under the mural of his grandmother, a gospel choir by the painted cornbread wall, and a DJ spinning remixes of blues classics. JJ moved through the crowd, ladling gumbo into bowls, nodding in appreciation as fellow chefs, some once tentative pop-uppers, now confident restaurateurs, wove in and out of service, each played a testament to shared struggle and collective triumph. Midway through the evening, JJ was invited on stage for a brief speech. He wiped his hands on his apron and stepped up to the microphone, the festival lights painting warm halos around his silhouette. 10 years ago, he began, voice steady against the hum of conversation. One kitchen door slammed in my face. Tonight we stand behind dozens of doors we've opened together. Doors to opportunities, to flavors, to community. He paused as the audience erupted in cheers, many holding steaming plates aloft like victory banners. After his speech, the festival's final event commenced, the Heritage Cook-Off, where teams of neighbors, immigrant families, church groups, community youth competed to reinterpret classic soul food dishes. Laughter and friendly jeers filled the air as judges sampled a turmeric-spiced collard wrap, then a guava berry cornbread loaf, and finally a smoky jackfruit ribs platter, crafted by a group of local vegan activists. When the winner was announced, a multi-generational team from the adjacent housing project who fused West African palm stew with Hoppin' John, the plaza swelled with applause that rolled down the alley like a wave. By the festival's end, JJ walked home under a canopy of lanterns, the scents of molasses and smoke trailing behind him. He paused at the entrance to Alley Eats Plaza and looked back. The tables were cleared, the murals shone brighter for the night's festivities, and a group of volunteers had already begun stringing up lights for next week's pop-up farmers market. In his pocket was a letter from the mayor's office, inviting him to serve on the newly formed Culinary Inclusion Commission, a body tasked with advising cities nationwide on replicating the Alley Eats model. As JJ unlocked his apartment door, he reflected that his journey, from a dismissed soul food chef to the founder of a citywide movement, had always been about more than food. It had been about forging connections between disparate communities, about insisting that flavor and culture are inseparable, and about proving that when one person refuses to be silenced, an entire city can change its appetite for justice. And as he drifted to sleep, dreams of future recipes and festival crowds danced in his mind, an endless banquet of possibility born in a single defiant alley.